All right, now let's talk about chick crack. What is it and how do we use it to attract the opposite sex? So in a nutshell, all chick crack is a series of routines that we are going to use on almost all of our targets in order to get their attention on us and us only, in order to keep their focus on us and us only, especially when we're in crowded venues where there's lots of distractions going on. So in this coaching lesson, I'm going to give you my top 3 chick crack routines that I've personally used for the last 10 years now and am still using to this very day. Why? Simply put, because they work, plain and simple. So the first chick crack routine that I'm going to teach you is what I call cold reads. Okay, this is what I call cold reading, which is something that mystics and psychics tend to use on their customers in order to make themselves appear to be supernatural, as if they can read your mind and tell your future. Now, my second and most favorite chick crack routine is a psychological test called the Cube, which was very, very popular back in the old school pickup days. And interestingly enough, it still continues to work like magic to this very day. So I'm going to teach you how to cube your targets, which is basically a psychological test. And my third favorite chick crack routine are palm reads, which I know sounds cheesy, and this is really old school pickup that I'm teaching you right now, at least for this coaching lesson, but I wouldn't be teaching this to you if it didn't still work like magic today. And for the record, I am not a fan of routines. Never have been, never will be. However, there are a few from the old pickup days, not many, but a few that did work like magic and still continue to work today, which are basically the 3 chick crack routines that I'm going to be teaching you here in this coaching lesson. Now, the problem was back in the old pickup days, 99% of those guys who were trying these things were doing it completely wrong, which is why they failed so often. And like anything I teach you, you can never ever be doing things to your target because you're wanting an outcome from her. You should never be doing anything I teach you as a technique and then sitting back and waiting for a reaction from her, because when you do it that way, it will not work. So you always have to be doing things from a place of self-amusement, authenticity, and detachment from outcome, meaning you're just doing these things to amuse yourself and have fun with her. And when you can come from that frame, the 3 chick crack routines that I'm about to teach you will work, period. Now, just as importantly, when you use these 3 chick crack routines that I'm about to teach you on your target, make sure that you are doing it at an appropriate time during your interaction with her where it seems natural and organic, meaning it should never seem forced or be coming from a place of desperation that you're going to lose your target's attention. Instead, it should always be coming from a place of abundance, entitlement, and self-amusement. So with that said, let's talk about how to do a cold read on a young, hot girl, a complete stranger, namely your target. And the easiest way to cold read your target, much less anyone for that matter, is to become a master observer. Just become a master of observing other people. You're going to watch the way they talk. You're going to watch the way they walk. You're going to pay attention to their appearance. Pay attention to little details in their appearance. You're going to pay attention to their body language. Pay attention to their persona. Look for any insecurities that they might display outright. Any shyness, any boldness, any lack of confidence, too much confidence. The truth is, most people are very, very easy to read after observing them for at least 30 seconds. The trick is, however, you need to shut off your own internal dialogue and your own insecurities and instead place your focus on reading the other person. Place yourself inside their head. And when you can do that, you would be surprised how much you can pick up about the other person whom you just met. Okay, this other person who is otherwise a complete stranger to you. So when I'm in set with my target, from the moment I open her, and many times even before I open her, I'm immediately observing her. I'm looking her up and down. I'm looking for those insecurities in her. I'm looking for her weaknesses. And many times it will show in her appearance. It'll show in what she's wearing. It'll show in how she does her makeup, how she does her hair, as well as other things that she's displaying that are just obvious, like her clothes, her shoes, her purse, her jewelry. All of these signs are dead giveaways that will tell you a lot about her very, very quickly, that you can use not only to size her up to see if she's even worth investing any more of your time gaming, but also to do a cold read on her and assume to be able to read into her life and tell her things about herself that you otherwise couldn't possibly know, simply by the observations you make from her outward appearance and the way she carries herself. And this is no different from what psychics do. From the moment you walk into their little shrine with, with their dazzling crystal ball and all the other goofy stuff they have going on to distract you, they are constantly sizing you up big time. From the moment you walk in, they're looking at your appearance. They're looking at the clothes you're wearing. They're looking at the way you carry yourself so that they can do a cold read on you later and appear to be able to read through your mind and tell you things about yourself that they couldn't possibly know. And as professional pickup artists, we do the exact same thing. We observe our target and we make fairly accurate observations that will make us appear as psychic to her based on the things that we can already see about her that she's displaying outright. The clothes that she wears, her character, her persona, her insecurities. We can make a fairly accurate analogy of the type of person that she is and what her future might be based on a simple observation of her outward appearance. And the more you practice reading through people simply by paying attention to their outward appearance and any dead giveaways they might display without even knowing it, the better you will become at doing cold reads. And a lot of times when I'm personally gaming a girl, I will sprinkle a few cold reads in throughout our interaction together. So I won't do just one big cold read on her and then sit back hoping for a reaction. Instead, I will sprinkle it into our conversation so that it flows naturally and organically, and it goes by undetected and under the radar, which is what you want, because you don't want her thinking that you're trying to do a technique on her so that you can impress her. That's the last thing we want. Instead, we want to sprinkle it into our conversation in bite-sized pieces. For example, I might be gaming a girl and my actual opener might be a cold read. I might see her and I might look at her and go, "You have brothers, don't you?" And she'll be like, "Yeah, how'd you know that?" And I'll look at her and say, "I could just tell." And she'll be like, How? And from there, I'll say, "Who are you? What's your name?" And then work normal game. She'll be like, "Melissa." I'll be like, "Nice to meet you. Who are you here with?" Find out her logistics. And then a few moments later, I'll look for another opportunity to sprinkle in some more cold reads. I'll make another observation about her, and then I'll do another cold read. Say, for example, her hair is up in a bun, or she's has it up in a ponytail and she's wearing sweats. I might say something like, "Are you running errands today? I bet you're running errands." Either that or you're just way too lazy to wear jeans today. So which is it? And she'll be like, "How did you know all that?" And I'll continue to do this throughout our conversation, just constantly sprinkling in cold reads. And I'll often take it much, much further than that. Like if I get a sense that she's shy or timid, I'll say something like, "You were quiet in school, weren't you? You liked to keep to yourself back then, didn't you? I bet you had a small but close circle of friends that you trusted growing up. Am I right?" And she'll be like, "Oh my God, how did you know that? How did you know all this? Who are you?" And she'll start freaking out. So effective cold reading is all about observing your target and just paying attention to those outward signs that she gives away that you can easily use to size her up and do effective cold reads on her. The trick is, again, however, you must shut off your own internal dialogue and your own insecurities in order to unselfishly observe the other person. And if you want to learn more about cold reads, you can simply Google mentalism or mentalism tricks. But what I just taught you is really all you need to know in order to successfully read through another person, or in our case, a young hot girl that we're attracted to, in order to appear to be able to read right through her, in order to appear to be able to read through her mind as if she were transparent. All right, moving on. My second form of chick crack is something called the cube. And back in the old pickup days, this is something that we did a lot. And it still works like magic today. And basically what the cube is it's a series of 6 questions that you are going to ask your target. And it's basically a psychological test. And the reason why young hot girls like being cubed so much is really because it feeds into their own narcissism about themselves. And almost every young hot girl that I've ever done the cube on in the last 10 years has absolutely loved it. Anything to do with astrology, horoscopes, personality tests, these are very, very powerful forms of chick crack that any guy can do. Okay, anything that feeds into a young hot girl's own narcissism about themselves, they are going to go crazy for. That's why chick crack routines will never ever die. They will just continue to work as long as there are young hot girls out there. So there are 6 basic questions that you want to ask your target when you cube her. So what I like to do is I'll generally cube my target after I've built up a little bit of comfort and a little bit of rapport with her, to where now I've isolated her, I've got her alone with me, and I want to get physical with her, so I will do the cube on her, which creates a very powerful psychological effect where you're not only teaching her something about herself that she probably never even knew, but you're actually bonding with her. You're getting her to bond with you because you're piercing through her insecurities. And when she feels that you could pierce through her insecurities, she is going to become physically attracted to you. Like I said, the cube is very, very powerful, and it has a very, very powerful psychological and physical effect on young hot girls. Mainly for the reasons that I gave you, that it feeds into their own narcissism about themselves. So say you're my target and I've got you isolated. Instead of making random polite conversation like most average chumps out there, that polite friend-to-friend conversation that only leads you into the friend zone, like, hey, how was your day? My day was fine. How was yours? Instead, I'll simply turn to the girl and say, do you mind if I cube you? And she'll say, what? What's that? And I'll say, it's a psychological test that will tell you your deepest thoughts, fears, and desires about yourself that you probably never even knew. And then the girl will be like, I don't know. And I'll just say, look, it's only 6 questions, okay? It's a psychological test, 6 questions. It'll tell you all about yourself. It takes 2 minutes. And then she'll say, okay, fine, let's do it. So then I'll be like, okay, let's go. Here's the first question. And I'll start with the first question. Okay, so right now I'm going to do a cube test on you, and this is how I do it with my targets, keeping it very fun, playful, lighthearted, and keeping it very simple, but yet offering tons of value. All right, so right now I'm going to cube you the same way I cube my targets, because really that is the best way to learn how to do a cube, is to actually be cubed. So right now I'm going to cube you the same way I cube my targets. So what I want you to do right now is I want you to close your eyes. All right, so close your eyes, and I want you to imagine that you are in a large white room. Okay, so you're in a large white room. Now I want you to add to that room a cube. I want you to put the cube in the middle of the room. So add a cube, doesn't matter what size, what color, just add a cube to the middle of your room. Got it? Okay. Now I want you to add a ladder. Could be anywhere in the room. Put it anywhere you like. Just add a ladder to your room. Okay, you got your ladder? All right, now I want you to add flowers to your room. Any type of flowers you want, any color, put them anywhere you want in the room. Okay, next thing I want you to add to the room is a horse. Yes, an actual horse. Add a horse to your room, anywhere you like. Any color, doesn't matter. Okay, the last thing I want you to add to your picture going on here in your head is a storm. Okay, so add a storm to your picture. Okay, Now you can open your eyes and I will tell you what your results are. So at this point, I will review my target's room and the ladder and the cube and all that other stuff she put in there and give her answers to what her deepest inner fears are and her own psychology is based on her answers. So what I'll generally do after the cube is done, after I've asked her those questions, I'll say, now open your eyes. And generally at this point, I'll ask my target about the cube. So I'll ask her about the cube first and I'll say, what size was the cube? And she'll either say small, medium, or large. Now if she says small, okay, well first off, you have to understand what the cube represents is the cube represents how you view yourself in the world, okay? And the size represents your ego. So if she says my cube was small, then it means that she's a bit more shy, a bit more timid, and a bit more insecure. If she says my cube is medium size, it means that she actually has a healthy ego, okay? That she's pretty normal. She's not overly arrogant and she's not like shy or timid. She's just a well-balanced person. She doesn't have any issues with her ego or the way she views herself in the world. She's very, very normal. Now if she says she has a large cube, that means that she's generally arrogant, she's generally self-centered, and she generally thinks very highly of herself. And generally when girls tell me they have a large cube, I kind of view it as a red flag, because although this is a fun psychological test, you have to understand it is a psychological test, and it does reveal a lot of answers about the person and how they view themselves. So if she tells me she has a large cube, I take it as a red flag that she's arrogant, self-centered, and it's all about her. And generally, the girls that I've cubed who've told me they have a large cube are generally exactly like that. Where personally, I prefer girls who say they either have a small cube or a medium-sized cube. Okay, I don't like girls with a large-ass cube because it just tells me that they're full of themselves. All right, so that's what the cube represents. It represents how you view yourself, and it represents the size of your ego. Also about the cube, I will ask my target, is the cube floating or is it on the ground? Now if she says it's on the ground, it means that she's practical, she lives life by the book, she's pretty well grounded. If the cube is floating, if she has a floating cube, like my cube was floating, it means that she is a little bit more artistic, she's a little bit more creative, she's a little bit more fly by the seat of her pants, because people who have a floating cube do tend to be more artistic and do tend to be more of that creative type, where they don't like things set in stone. They don't like to follow tradition. All right, so that is what a floating cube represents. Now, the next question I'll ask her is about the ladder. Remember when I asked you to put a ladder in your room? So I'll ask her about the ladder. I'll say, where's the ladder in your room? And some girls will be like, the ladder's just laying on the floor. And I'm like, it's just on the floor. She's like, yeah. I go, it's not up against a wall. She's like, nope, it's on the floor. So in that case, if it's just on the floor, generally what that means is the girl, because what the ladder represents is your goals, okay, and the things that you want in life. And if it is located any other place in the room but in the center, I mean, especially if it's on the floor, that means that you really don't see yourself achieving many of your goals, that you don't think it's possible, that you don't think you can do it. So if the girl's ladder is on the floor, that's another red flag. It doesn't mean she believes in herself. However, if the girl's ladder is up against a wall, or better yet, it's up against a cube, it means that she believes she's very capable of achieving her goals and probably will achieve her goals because she's already viewing it as possible. That's what the ladder represents. It represents your goals. That's why, like, people put it up against a wall, but even better, put it up against their cube. It basically, what it says about them is that they see their goals as achievable. All right? So that's what the ladder means. Now, the third thing I asked you to add to your room was flowers. So flowers, I know some POAs will argue with me on this, but flowers, when I do the cube test, it's supposed to they say it represents kids, but to me, what flowers represent in the psychological world is the person's family. How close are they to their family? So I'll ask the girl, like, A, what kind of flowers did you have? If she's like, black roses, that's not good. I mean, if she's like daisies, like really colorful daisies, and I'll be like, that's awesome, because it tells me that she has a good relationship with her family. Then I'll ask her, where did you put the flowers in the room? And if she says, I put them in the cube, like the flowers are actually in the cube, it means she's very, very close to her family. And generally, if the flowers are in her cube, it means not only is she close to her family, but she loves her family. And also, if the flowers are in her cube, it generally means that the flowers she chose are very bright colored flowers, okay? So these are bright colored flowers that she loves, that she feels good about, that she feels warm and energetic about, you know, which is basically the way she feels about her family, because she's placing them inside of the cube. Because you have to remember, the cube represents the way she sees herself in the world and her own ego, her own insecurity. So if the flowers are in her cube, it means she's very, very close with her family. Now, I've had some girls with bright colored flowers tell me that the flowers are way off to the side and they're nowhere near the cube. And it just tells me, like, yeah, they love their family, they care about their family, but they're not that close to them. They don't need to, like, you know, spend all the holidays with them or anything like that. It's just like they have a very good relationship, but they're very independent at the same time. They don't need to, you know, show up to all these like family reunions or anything like that. Now, the horse that I asked you to add into your room, what the horse represents is your lover or your ideal lover, okay? And basically, I will ask the girl, what color is the horse, first of all? And if she says he's brown, it's a neutral color. Generally, when a girl tells me she sees a brown horse, or she added a brown horse to her room, it tells me that she's looking for just a stable partner that will love her, that she can love back, that is not going to be all elusive or aloof or anything like that. I will also generally ask her if the horse has a saddle or not. And if the horse has a saddle, that's very key, because it means that you can ride the horse. It means that she believes she can attain this partner, that she's going to find this partner. Okay? Because if the horse doesn't have a saddle, it basically means that, yeah, she may want this kind of guy, but she doesn't think he's attainable. She doesn't think she can get this kind of guy. She might think the guy exists, but she doesn't think she's capable of getting that type of guy or that level of guy. Where if a girl tells me the horse is black, let's say the horse is black, for example, and has no saddle, what she's telling me is, A, the guy she wants is completely elusive, completely aloof. She's never going to get him. He's completely mysterious. He's somebody who only exists in her mind. So generally, like, if she says black horse, no saddle, she's generally chasing a guy that perhaps doesn't even exist. Okay, she could just be chasing a unicorn, but that's basically what she wants, is a guy who doesn't exist. And these girls who say like black horse, no saddle, these are the girls who tend to never get married. They tend to be single forever, even if they're hot. They tend to be the girls who just kind of like wander aimlessly from guy to guy, but even though they're hot, they can't actually hang on to a man. All right, and these are just conclusions that I've come to by running the cube on just multiple girls out there. So moving on, the last thing I asked you to add to your room was a storm. So generally, when it comes to the storm, I will ask the girl, well, first off, is the storm inside the room or outside the room? If the storm is inside the room, that's a red flag, because the storm represents your obstacles in life. It represents your problems in life and the issues that you're dealing with and how you handle those issues. So if the storm is inside her room, it means that she takes a lot of her problems and issues in life personally. She really lets her problems and issues in life bring her down and tear her down. And generally, people who have their storm inside the room tend to be very negative, very toxic, very bitter, and just not very happy people. Where people who have their storm outside of the room generally are at least somewhat healthy, okay? Because if the storm is outside, it means you view your problems from an outside window, like, yeah, you understand these are problems and they're obstacles, don't worry, I'm gonna take care of it. And you just know that, you know, this is just a part of life, that you have to deal with obstacles and challenges in life and problems and issues. It's just part of life. So if your storm is outside your room, thumbs up, means you're healthy, okay? And at this point, I will also ask the girl, how violent is your storm? Does it have rain, wind, thunder, lightning, friggin' tornado? And I've had girls tell me that. I mean, especially girls who have the storm inside their room. They're like, man, there's a tornado, you know, there's friggin' lightning, there's thunder clouds, all the clouds are black. It's like these chicks are generally very gloomy, very dark, very toxic, very negative. Huge red flag when a girl tells me that. I generally tend to think that the girl was abused growing up. she didn't have a father figure, or she just saw a lot growing up. So these chicks are generally mentally unstable. If they're telling me all this, there's storms inside, tornado, lightning, all this crazy nonsense happening inside the room. Even if the girl tells me the storm is outside, I mean, that's at least a little bit healthier. She's like, oh, the storm's outside, but yeah, there's a tornado, there's lightning, there's thunder. Generally, it tells me that, yeah, she's got a lot of issues going on in her life, a lot of problems, but yet she kind of keeps it at bay, where she knows it's just obstacles, she knows it's problems, she's going to do her best to get through it. But still, with all that stuff going on, it tells me she's got a lot of issues in her life, okay? A lot of issues. Like I said, this cube test is not just for fun, it really is a personality test. And you can draw a lot of conclusions about your target simply by running this cube. Now, my personal answer to the storm part, just to give you a little more insight on it, when I was cubed by another pickup artist who taught me this long time ago. When I did my cube, I just said the clouds were a little bit gray and there was a light sprinkle outside. That was my cube. I mean, that was my storm. I said there's gray clouds outside and there's like a light sprinkle, but way beyond the mountains, I could see sunlight. So what does that say? It automatically tells you that no matter what's going on in my life, I don't see it as the end of the world. I don't see it as completely dragging me down. And either way, I could still see sunlight beyond the clouds, which I actually could see in my mental theater in my room. I was like, I could see sunlight back there, it's coming, but we just have to wait for this this sprinkling to pass. It wasn't even raining that hard. I mean, it was like sprinkling, okay? So I generally will look for that in a girl storm, if it's just kind of like sprinkling, or if it's just raining lightly, a few dark clouds. But a very positive sign is when they say something like, oh, I could see sunlight out there though. Sunlight's coming. That's very positive because it tells you that that person is very, very stoic. Okay, they're very stoic, which means that they don't view life as a series of problems. They view life as a series of challenges and obstacles that they can overcome, and they believe they can overcome. That's why they see sunlight out there. Right, so that's a healthy perspective on the type of storms you want to look for in the girls that you do the cube on. Okay, so that is a cube in a nutshell. Like I said, it's 6 questions. I think it was 6. Put yourself in a room, put a cube, a ladder, a flower, horse, storm. That's 6 questions. So yeah, it's 6 questions. That's all the cube consists of, and you will find out a ton of information about your targets, and sometimes more than you want to know. But it does work. It's a fun, lighthearted test, but this is some serious chick crack that you can use to get your targets to really sit there and think about their own answers, but also in the process emotionally bond with you, because you're really diving deep into her insecurities and finding out more about her, which very, very few guys these days ever take the time to do. This is why they don't get these young, hot girls. They don't take enough time with them, and they make it all about themselves and all about their need to like have sex with them, when really the key to being a successful pickup artist, a professional pickup artist, is to really make it about the other person and kick back, and you kind of just play the puppet strings, which takes a lot more skill and a lot more maturity to do than just going out there running around trying to get girls to pull down their pants, because really the only girls you're going to get to do that are the very, very low value, low caliber girls. And if you don't believe me, just watch many of these pickup videos out there where these guys, even some of these top pickup companies, man, they're out there with their infield videos at these bars and clubs, mostly clubs, pulling these girls, like having sex with them the same night. And just look at the quality of those girls. I dare you to look at the quality of those girls. Don't get all enthralled by their like, wow, they're pulling this girl they just met. Really look at the quality of those girls and really think to yourself, do you think those are the only guys that they're going home with? I mean, does she not do this regularly? Of course she does. I mean, this is just something that girls of low caliber, low value, with a lot of insecurities do. They go home with guys with just enough skill to convince them to go home with them. But again, these are not girls that you would want to date seriously, because these girls are really jacked up in the head. Got a lot of issues, man, a lot of problems. Even if they look beautiful on the outside, got a lot of issues. And finally, my third favorite chick crack routine are basic palm reads. Now, the great thing about palm reads are you can completely not know what you're doing, but still make it look as if you know what you're doing. And all you really have to do is tell the girl to hold out her hand and just grab her hand and look at any of the lines on her hand, I tend to look at the longest line on her hand, and I will basically tell her that that is her lifeline. And I'll say, this is your lifeline, and this is how long you're gonna live. Now, I generally will not give the girl an actual number like, oh, you're gonna live to 60, or you're gonna live to 70, or you're gonna live to 80, just because that's not cool. We don't know how long anybody's gonna live. So I'll generally just say, you know, it looks like you're gonna live a long, happy, and healthy life as long as you stay healthy, happy, and full of life, which is basically advice that you can get from any Whole Foods market. But that's essentially what I will tell the girls. And sometimes I will add in even more based on my initial cold read of her. So based on what I got from my cold read from her, I can add in even more. Like if the girl's arrogant, for example, I could say, oh, you better watch out here. And I could point to one of the lines crossing, because in our hands, we not only have these long lines going across that you can point as her lifeline, but you also have some lines crossing it. And what I'll generally do is I'll point to a line crossing it, and I'll say, look, you've got a little interruption here in your lifeline, like you might have some issues in the future. So if the girl's like a little bit arrogant, for example, because I hate arrogance in women, I'll say, you know, looks like you're a little too overconfident, you know, this arrogance that you got, you want to watch out, because this could lead you into some bad times in the future if you don't cool it. Something to think about. And I'll tell her, you know, this line right here, watch out. This looks like it's coming up in your late 20s, early 30s. I'll point to that. I'll point to this intersection in her hand. So just by doing that, you'll notice it looks like I know what I'm doing, and it looks like I know what I'm talking about, even though palm read has never been proven to be accurate, and it's a complete hoax. And take it from me, because I grew up on Haight Street in San Francisco, and I saw guys doing palm reads all the time, ripping off our tourists for hundreds and hundreds of dollars each day, and these guys had no clue what they were talking about. But palm reads do work. They are very effective chick crack. The cold reads that I taught you, those are actually very accurate. If you could observe the person, observe the way they walk, the way they talk, their persona, their character, the way they carry themselves, you could draw a lot from just observing them and do cold reads on complete strangers. But in our case, young, hot girls. Okay, and then of course the cube. The cube is a psychological test, and that again is very, very powerful for getting girls to emotionally bond with you and become physically attracted to you, just because it really taps into her insecurities and her deepest inner fears and desires. The cube is super effective for that. Just based on the girls that I've cubed, I've gotten a lot of accurate information about them that ended up becoming true as I started to date them, all from the cube that I initially gave them in the first like 20 minutes of meeting them. I was able to gather all this information about them that ended up becoming true later as I dated them. I started to see these things come out. So the cube, I do really believe that is fairly accurate. It's a fairly accurate psychological test. So you got the cube, you got the cold reading, and now you got the palm reads. These are my 3 favorite forms of chick crack that you will want to implement into your game ASAP. Now, I'll even use chick crack routines from time to time to overcome last-minute resistance from my targets where the girl is not wanting to do anything physical with me because she doesn't feel that she knows me well enough yet. So what I'll generally do is I will generally do a few cold reads on the girl. I'll tell her things about her childhood, tell her things about her insecurities, make her feel that I know her better than she thought that I did. I might even share a few of my own insecurities. And generally at that point, the girl will open up to me and she will allow herself to become physical with me because now she feels like she knows me. And now she feels like I know her on a more intimate level. So chick crack not only works for gaming girls while you're in set with them after you approach them, but it also works for insta dates, day 2s, and just as importantly, like I mentioned, last minute resistance. Chick crack works all across the board, so you want to implement it into your game as much as possible. But again, without seeming forced and without seeming try hard. You want it to come across as natural and as congruent as possible.